Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Magic Mindfulness Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Hupp, and I have a very special guest with me today, my friend Holly Van Poots. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. So, let me tell you a little bit about Holly. Holly is a registered dietitian nutritionist. She's an entrepreneur who specializes in integrative nutrition care throughout the lifespan. So, she primarily serves clients with disordered eating, eating disordered, and disorders of the gut brain interaction through her private practice, Be Balanced Nutrition LLC. Now, Holly graduated summa cum laude with a degree in human nutrition, foods, and exercise from Virginia Tech. And then she completed her dietetic internship at the Medical College of Virginia Hospitals, which is now called VCU Health. Before starting her small business in 2017, she actually worked with acutely ill children in several large health systems for more than 15 years. Holly has been board certified specialist in pediatric nutrition ever since 2006, and she has served as a subject matter expert for the Commission on Dietetic Registration's pediatric specialty exam. She became a fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics in 2015, received the Pediatric Nutrition Practice Group Outstanding Member of the Year Award in 2019, and was honored as the Virginia Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, VAND, Outstanding Dietitian of the Year in 2021. So Holly has a wealth of knowledge. She's been a chair of the PNPG. She's also been the editor of the PNG Building Block for Life. And currently, she is a copy editor for the Dietitians in Integrative and Functional Medicine newsletter, the Integrative RDN, and for the patient education team of the Renal Dietitians Practice Group. She is serving her second term now in the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics House of Delegates and is a past president of Van's Blue Ridge District. Now, not only that, but she is a dedicated leader, a published author, and an international presenter. Holly is a military spouse and the proud parent to teenage sons. And outside of nutrition, she enjoys work as a Pilates, yoga, and mobility instructor. And that is actually how Holly and I first met. I believe it was through PIO, which is a combination of Pilates and yoga. And if I remember
Yes.
correctly, I was teaching one of my first classes and I was struggling to stay on beat. And you came to practice and you had it on point. And I was so grateful you were there. And I was so shocked. And we immediately connected after class.
We did. I love PIO. I think I would probably fall over if I tried to do that routine we were doing back then now.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was a lot of fun. So welcome, Holly. I'm so glad that you are here.
Yes, thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So Holly and I, we have had I've had the privilege of working with you many, many times. We've worked together on a variety of different workshops. We've worked together on hosting intuitive eating book clubs, which was super, super fun. And so I
Yes.
would love for you, if you don't mind, maybe just tell us a little bit about mindful eating and whatever feels inspired for you in the moment.
Yes, great. So I really love to talk with people about mindful eating. And I think that mindful eating a lot of times is used in the context of being mindful of what you eat for the purposes of weight loss. But I consider myself to be a weight inclusive provider. I practice from a health at every size approach. And so I don't really like to focus on weight as an outcome of the work that I do. I really believe in mindful eating, but I actually like to use it in the context of improving gut health or optimizing gut health and function. I have found that since the pandemic, people are stressed and it is manifesting in their guts. And so we're just seeing so many people having some issues with digestion, absorption, symptoms, gas, bloating, all of these kinds of things that perhaps the allopathic medicine, conventional, traditional medical model hasn't really gotten answers for. And so I truly believe that how you eat is just as important as what you eat. And so that is some of the foundational work that I do with clients to help them really optimize their health and their gut function, which has this carryover into many things, including mental health and the immune system. And the gut is just so important to our overall health that it's a great place to start when we don't have all the answers or when we're still looking to uncover some root causes.
And I love that you say that about the weight inclusivity. I think that was one of the things that drew me to you in the first place, because when we first met, I was working as a holistic health coach. And one of the things that really deterred me from the health coaching world was that so many people were focused on weight loss instead of holistic well being and overall health. And so I love that you focus on this health at every size model. And I also love how our mindfulness practices and mindful eating. Mindfulness overall can help to reduce stress, which, like you said, has such an impact on our gut health. And
Yes.
so, how this mindful eating and these mindfulness practices together can help to support that gut health.
Yes, very much so. I think that a lot of times when I'm talking with clients, and eating is something that we know that we have to do, but we don't spend a lot of time planning or thinking about it, which is not necessarily a problem. Everyone isn't a foodie, and everyone doesn't want their day to revolve around food. Some people, just have to eat, and that's just a part of their day that they need to get in. But when we find that, you bring your lunch to your desk and you sit here on your computer and you're doing all of this stuff and you look over and you don't even remember eating what you ate for lunch. And then all afternoon your stomach is hurting. That's a big red flag to me, that your body wasn't ready for that food, that your mind wasn't engaged in the process of eating and digestion, and that you're not getting everything out of your food that you could in order to optimize your health. So again, starting with some of those very foundational steps to optimize digestion, I think can be really powerful for people.
And you're totally right. I've been there before myself, where I was so busy with work and I felt like I didn't have the time to step away for a few minutes to eat. When in reality, I don't even remember eating my lunch. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt hungry for the rest of the afternoon because I wasn't connected to the experience of eating. And not only that, even taking that 15 minutes away from my desk and my computer, aside from the eating aspect of things, would have been so much better for my stress and my mental health, to improve not only my eating experience and my digestive experience, but also my mental well-being, just to get a break.
Yeah, for sure. I think, we feel so rushed for time. And I know that that's something that I experience in my life too. But I think that all of the multitasking and all of the, pressure to be productive would actually be alleviated. And perhaps we'd even be more productive if we did take 10 or 15 minutes away from our desk. It doesn't actually take that long to eat. And so you can do it in a way that is very supportive without, missing out on a huge part of your workday. You don't have to take an hour break. I mean, if you can, that's great and wonderful. But many people don't feel like they have 30 minutes or 60 minutes to stop in the middle of the day. And I think, we have that expectation that it needs to be this long process, when in fact we can get benefits from even a few minutes focused on eating, and that kind of break from working, and kind of just being mindful about what we're asking our body to do at that point in time.
Yes, I love how you say that. That's just so true. And it's interesting how it seems counterintuitive that actually slowing down, we can be even more productive, but we don't see it that way when we're in the moment sometimes. So I love
Yes.
how you mentioned these foundational aspects of mindful eating. So if someone were new to mindful eating or they weren't that familiar with it, how would you get them started? What is something they could, like, how could they easily begin this process?
Yeah, so we would talk about the concepts of mindfulness around eating. And again, I would establish that this is not for the purposes of minimizing the food that you consume. This is for the purposes of coordinating the digestive cascade, is what it is called. So there's some great research that suggests that even up to as much as 30% of stomach acid production happens in what is called the cephalic phase of digestion, which is basically the head. So we're talking about the smell of food, the sight of food, the thought of food. So I'll talk to my clients about, before they take their first bite, looking at what's on the plate in front of them. Imagining, just for a couple of seconds, what is it going to taste like? What is it going to What about that might make your mouth water? That's the secretion of salivary amylase that starts off digestion, triggers secretion of stomach acid further down the GI tract. So I would say, what are the textures in this meal? What are the temperatures? What are the kind of flavors of the meal? Is it salty? Is it sweet? Is it sour? Is it bitter? Just so that you're getting your mouth starting to water, you're preparing your body for accepting food. Take a couple of whiffs, just let, again, your thoughts drift to that food. And then you can start eating. And the first couple of bites, take them very slowly and chew them really thoroughly. I think most people probably find that if you were to actually count how many times you chew before you swallow, it's, maybe 8 or 10 or even less. Whereas optimally, I've seen, 20 or 30 times chewing until the food is almost liquid in your mouth. I don't know that you necessarily have to chew every bite 30 times. But if you slow down those first few bites, then your body's gotten the message. It is gonna, kick in with that digestive cascade so that all of the parts are ready for food to hit your stomach, for your enzymes and all of those amylase, lipase, proteases that are being secreted. And then also chewing is part of mechanical digestion. So the more work you do with your teeth, the less work your stomach has to do. So by the time that it gets there, it really will be easier for your body to absorb and move that through your GI tract.
I love that. I love that. And it's so simple, but it's something
Yes.
that we often don't do. Just this practice of slowing down, noticing the experience of our food, noticing the smells, the color, the texture, the qualities, and slowing down to actually chew. It seems so simple, but it's something that's so easy to overlook.
Right. I think, we do it without thinking. But the other things I like about starting with that are, we again are encouraging a mind body connection, some mindfulness around habits. We're giving ourselves that time to, pause and take a little time out and say, all right, nourishing myself is important. Mindful eating, thorough, good chewing can be done anywhere. So you don't have to be in a place or all by yourself. It's not embarrassing in any way, and it's free. It's super easy to integrate into a routine. It just takes remembering to do it and then the consistency of practice as well.
I love that, and I love that, our mindfulness practices like this, they are free, they're so easily accessible, it's like building a muscle, the more we do it, the easier it gets, the more second nature it becomes, and the more it just flows into our daily life without us having to think about it so much, but at first, you do have to bring in that self-awareness and that conscious choice to be in the moment.
Yes, absolutely. And you had mentioned before that a big part of my practice and when you were reading my bio is disorders of gut-brain interaction. So if you're not familiar with that term, or for any listeners that aren't familiar with the term DGBI, that is a class of functional gastrointestinal disorders. So a few examples of that are things like irritable bowel syndrome, functional dyspepsia, functional constipation. So basically, things that we have ruled out an organic cause for, there's no obstruction, there's no, clear medical reason for it, but it's certainly not made up. It's truly a problem. It is a disorder, but a lot of times it's this disorder between the gut and the brain communicating. And so, some hallmarks of DGBIs are that people have something called visceral hypersensitivity in their gut. And so, the best way that I can explain that is people feel their guts. If you don't have visceral hypersensitivity, you can just sit here and be like, oh, I can't feel my intestines. I might feel my stomach is growling when I'm hungry, but I don't have this sensation of things moving through my GI tract at all times. Whereas people that have that visceral hypersensitivity become very in tune with what their digestive tract is doing. And so when you have symptoms that, are uncomfortable, diarrhea, constipation, pain, you almost develop a fear of eating because you know what's coming next. And so it creates this cycle of anxiety and fear even at the idea of food. So, this concept of mindful eating also helps, again, your body prepare, helps you tap into what we call your rest and digest nervous system, which is parasympathetic. That's the opposite of fight or flight, which is your sympathetic nervous system. And I'm sure you could talk about this all day long, but mindfulness, deep breathing, meditation, those are ways that we can tap into the PNS, or parasympathetic nervous system. And so that's another free, easy, portable thing that people can do before meals to set their body up for optimal digestion that also has this carryover into stress management, coping skills, calming of the body, improved sleep at other times. We might not make time to sit down and meditate for 30 minutes, but most people will make time to eat for 5 or 10, at least a couple of times a day. So pairing that diaphragmatic breathing with a mealtime can be another way to help you get it into your day without feeling like you've added another thing to your to-do list that feels very unmanageable and adds
Yes.
more stress.
Exactly, exactly. I'm so glad that you said that because I was going to ask you, we know that mindfulness can reduce stress. And we know that stress is known to negatively impact gut health. And this connection between the gut and the brain and that communication pathway. And so, combining the mindfulness with the eating, pairing the two together, it's such a simple yet powerful way to help support the body and the mind.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I want to go back to one thing that you mentioned a bit ago when you were talking about, your own experiences with eating quickly and in a distracted manner. Because I've had the same experiences, where you finish your plate and you're like, I don't remember eating that, and you didn't actually get satisfaction out of eating, nor did you really attain fullness.
No.
So, when we work together on intuitive eating, that is one of the big concepts that we try to get across to people with that intuitive eating framework is there is physical fullness. So actually having enough food in your belly that you have this sensation of having eaten. And many people who, just snack throughout the day or graze, they might go between hungry and neutral, but they never actually get full, or they think that full means Thanksgiving Day full when it's not. It's, again, this sensation of food in the belly, which fullness is also different from satisfaction. I'm sure many people who've ever been on a diet or on a weight loss journey have had the experience of craving, something sweet, a cookie, chocolate, something like that. And, diet culture will say, oh, eat a piece of fruit, eat some carrots, eat this and that. And, you eat all these carrots and then you're like, oh my gosh, I still want that stinking cookie. And then you go and eat the cookie anyway. Well, that's because the carrots weren't satisfying. And so we want to get pleasure out of eating. Food is not just food, it's not just fuel, it's much more than that. It is a coping skill. When you don't have other coping skills, that can become a problem. But food can be what we need it to be in the moment, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. So being able to recognize, am I hungry? Am I emotionally hungry? Am I feeling anxious and I'm looking for a way to soothe myself? That can help you reach into your toolbox of coping skills and choose the right one. And then again, get that actual enjoyment out of eating by eating what your body is telling you it needs, at a specific time.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad you said that because I'll tell you, mindful and intuitive eating has changed my life. And I used to, I don't know, I tried so many diets over the years, and I used to have such a poor relationship with food. And I don't know, I never really looked forward to eating. It was always more like things I couldn't eat or things I shouldn't be doing. And now, like, I love to eat. I love to cook. I have so much fun with food. And I I feel like I'm healthier now than I was then in the sense that I'm eating like the full spectrum, everything that nourishes me, everything that satisfies me. But I also have um a much healthier relationship with food than I used to. I was always trying to shrink myself or, follow the next diet trend or the next fad. This is what you should do. This is the best way to eat. This is what you really need to be doing. but it made me feel disconnected from myself. It made me feel not satisfied with what I was eating. I was always seeking something more, feeling like I wasn't doing enough or doing it right. Whereas now that I've learned to trust my body, now that I've learned to tap into this intuitive eating and the mindful eating and enjoy the experience of eating, it's so much more fun. It's so much more pleasurable. It's so much less stressful. And I just was wondering what your experience was that like with that with yourself or your clients. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has been down this path.
You are not the only one at all. I've had similar experiences, and I'm sure I have countless clients who would echo the same. I think, we live in this culture that is very focused on youth, on thinness, on productivity, on just all of these ways to make ourselves be as small as we can and as young as we can. And that's not where the wisdom lies, right? Diet culture, I always remind my clients, diet culture is a business. It is a business that masquerades as health and wellness. But diet and fitness culture profits off of our failures, right? Do you even know anyone who has ever only been on one diet? I would say probably not, because, unfortunately, the research shows that diets really don't work for the majority of people. And so hating ourselves then, guilting, shaming ourselves into shrinking our bodies is not effective. So we have to step back and say, one, do I have a goal that's reasonable? Am I trying to shrink myself to a size that is not what my body is meant to be? And I have one body to last my entire life, every single day that I live on this planet. So let me try to love it and care for it and respect it and nurture it. It will be much more pleasurable experience than focusing on all the things that you can't have, all of the restrictions. When we can work from a place of body kindness and body respect. And that, I think people also think that body positivity means that you have to love everything about your body and that you don't wish that it looked different. But that is not actually what it means. Maybe body neutrality is a place to start, but we can be respectful and kind, no matter how much your space your body is taking up. And we should be respectful and kind to ourselves. Absolutely.
Yes, and I love that you have the background in yoga like I do too, because I mean, it so perfectly complements what you're talking about right now. Yoga teaches us to love and accept ourselves, to meet ourselves exactly where we're at, where we are right now. And the practices that you're teaching, the practices that you're talking about, they do the exact same thing. They teach us to love and accept ourselves exactly as we are, to meet ourselves where we're at. And like you said, I think you said something about when you know better, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. I love that.
Yes, yes, that is my life's motto. Wish I came up with it myself. I didn't. It's a Maya Angelou quote, but I really do try to live by that, in my personal life and my professional life. None of us are perfect. Even when you're an expert, there's still plenty of things you don't know. And no matter how much I know from a book or from research or even from, sitting across from people and hearing their lived experiences, I will never know as much about your body and your lived experiences as you will. So, I'm a guide that helps give you some options and point you on your way and teach you some skills, train you up to live this life that is going to be, fully fulfilling and nourishing and pleasurable. And I think that food is a way that we can do that. I think that mindful movement, whether it's yoga, whether it's Pilates, whether it's meditation, whether it's mobility work, these exercises, strength training, even that help us tune into our bodies, make this connection with what our bodies are able to do, is going to have skills that carry over into these other aspects of living a mindful lifestyle.
Yes, I love that. It all comes back to this self awareness and learning to trust
Yes.
ourselves, learning to listen to that inner wisdom and letting it be our guide.
Yes, for sure. I love the idea of inner wisdom and body wisdom and body trust. In functional medicine, there is a saying that the body is infinitely wise. And I love that so much too, because many times we get in our body's own way of doing its healing. We try to outsmart it. We try to say, oh, I know better if I just, crank these numbers and eat these calories and burn this much and, do this much and sleep this many hours. But it's not, the body is very adaptable. It has a remarkable ability to compensate, and it's set up to win, right? Your body wants to keep you alive. And so, it'll outsmart us even when we think that we are outsmarting it. So I think that, again, being able to listen to what it is that our body is trying to tell us, being able to trust that message and then respond appropriately can really be a game changer.
Yes, I think you're right. I think you're right. And so I know that you teach Pilates, you teach yoga. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how these mind body exercises can help us in this practice of mindful eating and body acceptance and self awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we kind of dive into the field of sports psychology, there are a couple of things that we know pretty well. And one is that very elite athletes or competitive athletes tend to do what we call dissociate when they train. So they don't necessarily focus on their body, they just put in the steps, they do the work, they train their muscles. They might, run to music that has a certain beat, and so they pace themselves through that, or they might listen to a podcast to make the time go, or they might work out with a friend so that conversation can be happening. So again, they're not necessarily tuning into what the body is doing so much, they're just trying to go through the motions, accumulate the work, increase the body's capacity. But during competition, they do what we call associate. So they use associative mindfulness. And that is where they really know what kind of that edge is of the work that they're able to do. So they might be tuning in to their heart rate or the cadence of their running, or, it varies depending on the sport. So it's a well-established thing that exercise has a mindfulness component, and that it can help us to perform our best, depending on which tool that we choose. So I like to use that analogy because I think many times people exercise and sometimes we need a dissociative strategy. We want to put off the stress. If we're exercising in the middle of the workday, we might want to just get on the treadmill or go for a walk outside, put on some headphones, not think about it, but just have some time away from our thoughts, or let our thoughts go where we want them to. Whereas other times we're exercising and we really want to tune in to what our body is telling us. And I think both are really important skills. Yoga, Pilates, strength training. I think of those things as mindful, associative forms of exercise. And they are helping us to pay attention to our body, to improve our proprioception, to tune into our breath, to use our breath to calm the body or get through a hard, challenging set, stay in a pose a little bit longer when, if we were on our own, we might say, all right, that's enough of that. So, having this knowledge around association, dissociation, these again are coping skills that we can draw on for other things like stress management, figuring out if what your body needs right now is some time away from your thoughts or some time with your thoughts, and making sure that you understand which is more challenging for you, because it just might be that you need some practice with the other method to help gain all of the benefits of that particular type of exercise.
Thank you. That was a very good description. And I love that. And I think you're totally right because I remember I used to have such a hard time sitting still. And so I would turn to running as my mindfulness practice, my mindful movement meditation. I called it my moving meditation because I couldn't sit
Yes.
still. I had such a hard time. But when I was running, I could get into my head and get out of my body. And I could run forever. I was training for marathons at the time. So it was perfect for me at the time. But what I really needed to practice was that more the associative strategies because I was great
Yes.
at the dissociative ones, but not the associative ones. And now, over time, I've gotten better at the associative types as well.
Yeah. And I think too, understanding your own self and where you are in life, what you needed at that time was probably an opportunity to dissociate a little bit.
I did.
And then by doing that, you make room, to be mindful. You get to know your body a little bit better, even though, you're letting your mind dissociate from the movement. You have that confidence that your body is able to complete that task, that if you, trust it to do its thing, it will. And so I think sometimes, people might not be ready for some type of mindful movement. And maybe that's not the place to introduce that. Maybe they can do, some meditation or a couple of deep breaths or something that takes less time, right? You can start, as with a 2-minute meditation or 2 minutes of,
Yes.
breath work. And that can still be profoundly impactful for your nervous system. And so when you can know yourself well enough to assess your capacity, you'll be more successful if you introduce those activities at the right time when you do have that bandwidth.
And I love how you mentioned that you can start small because it's the same exact thing like you were saying earlier with mindful eating. Coming back to
Yes.
that, you can start small. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but you can start small.
Yes.
You can meet yourself where you're at.
Yes, absolutely. I read a study a few years back, and I'm always referencing this to with clients because I think that it is it gets across a really good point about that idea that it doesn't have to take a long time. It was a study that was done in, I believe it was college age, or late teens, early 20s. I work with a lot of people in that age group, so it's I think it applies to other people. I'm sure there's studies that suggest that, but certainly for people in that age group, it is demonstrated by the study. And what they did was they exposed them to a stressful task, and then they took, they asked them, their perceptions of being stressed, but they also took some markers like heart rate variability, some different other, kind of physical markers of the body's reflection of stress. And so they gave them the task of doing 2 minutes of what they called the skewed breath, which is just a longer exhale than an inhale. And then they would repeat these markers, to see how their body was handling stress. And they found that after 2 minutes of a skewed breath, so you don't even have to count it, just, a slow exhale, these people had decreased markers of stress and perception of stress for 20 minutes. And so I always tell people you can eat in less than 20 minutes. So, get your body into rest and digest, get it ready to, receive food. And then that also can be a skill that you can carry over into your life, when you're feeling tension, when you're feeling anxiety, when you're feeling stress. You can just run to the bathroom or you can sit in your chair. Like it doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing to lengthen your exhale for 2 minutes of time.
No, and I love that you said that. That's one of my favorite breathing practices. I bring it into my yoga classes quite often. And
Yes,
it
me
has such
too.
a powerful effect on the nervous system.
It really does. It really does. It's not, some people maybe think, when they're introduced to some of this that it's a little woo-woo, but it's not. It's absolutely physiological. And we know, again, that the because of the gut-brain axis and the gut-brain interaction, that there's this impact of when you spend a lot of time in this fight or flight response, it having significant impacts on your health. And that's not just, gut health and gut function, but again, like I mentioned earlier, I have just found that people, when they are stressed, it does tend to manifest in their guts. And then, they're developing things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or SIBO and these other conditions that, it truly makes an impact on the treatment of those, to do mindful eating, to do good chewing, to set up that digestive cascade, to let your body calm itself. Again, if we get out of our own way, the body will do what it's designed to do many times.
Yes, yes. Well, I feel like we could go on about this all day. We have covered a lot. We talked about mindful eating. We talked about its role in gut health and gut restoration, satisfaction, the sensory experience of food. We talked about the gut brain axis. mind body
Yes.
exercises, associative and dissociative cognitive training strategies. So, if you were to leave our listeners with one final thought for today, one simple, I don't know, whatever comes to your heart, whatever's on your heart or your mind, what would you like to leave them with today?
Yeah, well, I think, because we're mostly talking about food here, I want to kind of center that message around food and the idea that food truly is medicine and it can have a profound impact on our ability to live with optimal health and positive vitality and pleasure and satisfaction. We have a lot of power on our plate. And honestly, that is why I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I believe that so deep in my heart and in my bones. And being able to share that message with other people, I think is, really my life's calling.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. I will leave your website in the show notes. You can find Holly at bebalancedrdn.com. And so I will link to her website in the show notes, as well as her Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So you can connect with her there. And wow, what a powerful episode. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your insights. I'm so grateful for you.
Yes, I'm grateful for you too. Thank you so much for having me.